The hotel room that changed everything. My wife texted me one word at her company party, come. But when I found her on the 17th floor of that hotel, what I discovered wasn't just an affair. It was a secret life she'd been living for 2 years. The hidden phone, the deleted messages, the mysterious bracelet that appeared overnight. What I uncovered next would either destroy our marriage or save it in ways I never expected. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. I watched the ice melt in my whiskey for 23 minutes before I realized I was still holding it. The condensation had soaked through the cocktail napkin, leaving a perfect wet circle on my pants that nobody would notice. I was invisible at these things. Always had been. The corporate party buzzed around me like expensive white noise. Laughter that cost too much. Heels scraping against imported marble. Conversations about quarterly projections and strategic initiatives that sounded like a foreign language I'd never bothered to learn. My wife Emma had vanished into that crowd an hour ago. Just need to network for a few minutes, she'd said, leaving me holding her purse because she didn't want it weighing her down while she worked the room. At 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. One word, no punctuation. Come. Not, where are you? Not, can you find me? Just that cold, imperial summons that made my stomach drop. I stared at it longer than I should have, not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I understood it perfectly. I found myself walking toward the elevator like a man in a trance, her purse still clutched in my sweaty palm. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter now. Some guests had moved to the cigar terrace, others to the hotel bar downstairs. But I followed my instincts toward the elevator banks, toward whatever Emma was summoning me to witness. Through the glass wall that overlooked the atrium bar, I saw her. She was perched on one of those high brass stools, legs crossed towards someone whose back was turned to me. Not just anyone, him. David Garrison, her district manager. The one she talked about constantly, whose opinions mattered more than mine, whose approval she craved like oxygen. Even from 3 floors up, I could read their body language like a book I didn't want to finish, her hand resting casually on his forearm, his body angled toward her like she was the only person in the room. That low, knowing smile she used to give me before we were married. My hands went numb. This wasn't networking. This wasn't professional development. This was something else entirely. I backed away from the glass and found myself pressing the elevator button without conscious thought. When the doors opened, I stepped inside and stared at the floor numbers, like they held answers I wasn't ready to hear. My thumb landed on 17. The executive floor. Emma had mentioned it once. They give senior team members access to the executive suites. It's ridiculously fancy up there. The elevator climbed with that gentle mechanical hum that makes your ears pop. Each floor that passed felt like a countdown to something irreversible. When the doors opened, I was hit with the smell of eucalyptus and expensive carpeting. The hallway was dimly lit, lined with black and gold placards, eerily quiet except for the soft thrum of central air conditioning. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. At the far end of the hallway, a door clicked shut. I caught just a glimpse of a red dress. The same red dress Emma had spent an hour choosing tonight, the one I'd complimented while she applied lipstick in our bathroom mirror. I stood frozen, staring at that door. Room 1724. My legs refused to move closer, like some primal part of my brain was protecting me from what lay behind it. That's when I heard the voices. Muffled but unmistakable. Her laugh, the genuine one I hadn't heard in months. A man's voice, deeper, confident. Then her voice again, softer than she'd been with me in years. My heart was trying to punch through my ribcage. I reached for my phone, desperate for something to anchor me to reality, when the door suddenly opened. But it wasn't Emma who stepped out. It was housekeeping, a young woman in a gray uniform who paused when she saw me lurking in the hallway like some kind of stalker. I tried to act natural, gave a stiff smile, and headed back toward the elevator. But as I waited for the doors to open, a terrible realization hit me. The room she'd just cleaned was empty, pristine, like it had never been used. So where the hell was my wife? The elevator ride back down felt like descending into quicksand. I returned to the ninth floor, to the party that was winding down, scanning faces for the woman I'd been married to for 6 years but suddenly didn't recognize at all. She wasn't there. Neither was Garrison. I checked the bar, the terrace, even asked the bartender if he'd seen a woman in red. "Lot of red dresses tonight, man," was all he said before turning away. That's when I did something I hadn't done in years. Something I'd promised myself I'd never stoop to. I opened her location sharing on my phone. The little blue dot showed her on the 17th floor, the same floor where I'd just found an empty, unused hotel room. I rode that elevator back up, my mind spinning with possibilities I didn't want to consider. When I reached 1724 again, the door was wide open. Lights on, bed untouched, minibar still sealed. The room looked like a showroom display, but according to her phone, Emma was right here. I heard the elevator ding behind me and spun around, expecting to see her caught red-handed, maybe carrying her heels with that guilty expression she got when she knew she crossed a line. The elevator was empty. I checked her location again. Still showing 17th floor, still showing she was exactly where I was standing, in a room that had clearly never been occupied. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I drove home in complete silence, windows cracked just enough to keep me from suffocating on my own thoughts. When I pulled into our driveway at 1:30 a.m., her car wasn't there. I sat in the driver's seat until my hands stopped shaking, then went inside and found the bottle of bourbon I'd been saving for a celebration that now felt like it would never come. By 3 a.m., I was on the living room floor, staring at the ceiling, phone balanced on my chest as I watched that blue dot hover in the same impossible location. At 4:27 a.m., it disappeared completely. Location services disabled. Emma came home at 5:06 a.m. I heard the garage door before her footsteps. I was sitting on the couch by then, blanket pulled up to my chest like armor. She walked in carrying her heels, hair slightly messed but not scandalously so. She was wearing a different coat than the one she'd left in, navy instead of red. "Hey," she said softly, like I'd just woken up early. "Didn't mean to wake you." I didn't speak, just stared at her like she was a stranger who'd broken into our house. "Everything okay? Where were you?" She blinked twice. "At the hotel. You left early, remember? I was looking for you. I had a few drinks, didn't feel safe driving. I crashed in one of the open suites HR arranged for staff." Her story was smooth, practiced, too practiced. "What room number?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. 17-something. "I don't remember, Tom. I was half asleep when they gave me the key." "Why?" "I was on that floor. The room was empty." Her eyes narrowed. "Wait, were you following me?" Just like that, it flipped. I was the one being accused, the paranoid husband who couldn't trust his wife, the one who needed to explain himself. "I was worried," I said quietly. "You disappeared for hours." "Hunch, you left me," she shot back. "You walked out without saying goodbye. You didn't even answer my text." "That wasn't a text. That was a command. One word." She didn't argue, just walked past me into the bathroom and shut the door. When I heard the shower start, I did something I'd never done in 6 years of marriage. I looked at her phone. What I found was worse than evidence of an affair. It was the absence of evidence entirely. No messages, no call history, no browser data. Everything had been wiped clean, like her entire evening had been professionally scrubbed from existence. Who does that? Who deletes everything unless they have something to hide? When she came out of the bathroom in a towel, she caught me with her phone in my hands. "You're checking my phone now." I couldn't speak. "Jesus, Tom, you've really lost it." But the next morning I found something she'd forgotten to hide. Something that would crack this mystery wide open and force us both to confront truths we'd been avoiding for years. It was sitting on the bathroom counter like it had always been there. A silver bracelet with a compass charm. Delicate, tarnished, clearly meaningful to someone, but I'd never seen it before in my life. I cleaned that bathroom every Sunday. I would have noticed. When I held it up and asked where it came from, Emma's response told me everything I needed to know. "I don't know. It's old, probably from a drawer." But her eyes said something different. They said she'd been caught, and she knew it. That's when I started digging deeper. And what I found in her old, supposedly dead phone would change everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, and myself. The phone was an iPhone 5S she'd claimed to lose 2 years ago, but it was still linked to her Apple ID, still syncing data, still remembering conversations she thought were buried forever. The messages with David Garrison went back 18 months. What started as work chatter had evolved into something much more intimate. Late-night texts, inside jokes, and finally the message that made my blood run cold. Still thinking about that elevator ride. There were photos too, 37 of them, most innocent. Hotel views, conference rooms, coffee cups. But the last two were videos, short clips of her in hotel rooms, laughing, relaxed, intimate in ways I hadn't seen in years. She looked happy, genuinely, radiantly happy in a way that made my chest ache with recognition and loss. I'd found the smoking gun, the evidence that would justify my suspicions, validate my paranoia, give me grounds for righteous anger and a clean divorce. Instead, I sat in my car in our driveway, staring at her digital betrayal, and felt nothing but sadness. Not for what she'd done, for what we'd both let slip away without fighting for it. When I walked back into the house, Emma was making breakfast like nothing had happened. She smiled when she saw me, not guilty or defensive, just routine domestic warmth. Hungry? I looked at her for 5 seconds and said, "David says hi." The smile cracked, just slightly, a half-second delay, a twitch of panic behind her calm facade. "What? You should really factory reset your old phones. They remember everything you try to forget." The spoon clinked hard against the pan. In that sound, I finally heard the truth. What happened next surprised us both. She didn't deny it, didn't lie or deflect or turn it back on me. She just stood there, one hand on the pot handle, the other hanging useless at her side, and looked smaller than I'd seen her in years. "I didn't know that phone was still synced," she whispered. "I saw everything," I said. "I saw enough." She lowered her gaze. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did. And even if it didn't, the lying did, the hiding, the rewriting of our history." Then she said something I truly didn't see coming. "I ended it." I blinked. "What?" "Oh, with David, 6 months ago. I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would just fade away." Her voice cracked. "I didn't love him. I didn't even really like him. I liked how he made me feel like someone new, someone I used to be." That was the first honest thing she said in months. "I didn't know how to talk to you anymore," she continued. "Every time I looked at you, I saw the version of me you still thought existed. And I didn't know how to say I wasn't her anymore." We sat at the kitchen table, the evidence of her betrayal spread between us like a map of our failures. But instead of accusations and ultimatums, something strange happened. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years, about how we'd stopped seeing each other as people and started treating each other like roommates, about how she'd felt invisible in our marriage long before David came along, about how I'd retreated into work and routine instead of fighting for us when things got difficult. The affair was a symptom, not the disease. The disease was the slow drift we'd both allowed, the gradual replacement of intimacy with obligation, passion with politeness. A week later, I moved out. Not in anger, but to give us both space to figure out who we were outside the broken patterns we'd created together. We started writing emails, honest ones. No small talk or performative politeness, just truth. We admitted things we'd been too afraid to say face to face. 3 months later, we met for coffee. 6 months after that, we started couples therapy. Not to fix what was broken, but to build something new, something fireproof. It's not perfect now. We're both different people than we were when this started. But we're honest people, and sometimes that's all you need to begin again. She betrayed me, yes, but in the strangest way, it saved us both. Forced us to confront the slow death we'd been dying together, the careful distance we'd maintained to avoid dealing with our problems. The hotel room that night was empty because she'd already decided to end it with David. The mysterious bracelet belonged to her sister. She'd borrowed it for the party and forgotten to return it. The deleted messages were her attempt to erase evidence of something she was already ashamed of. She'd been trying to find her way back to us for months. I just couldn't see it through my own fear and suspicion. Today, we live in a smaller house, in a different neighborhood. We go to therapy every other week. We fight sometimes, but we fight fair. We're learning to be married to the people we actually are, not the people we used to be or wish we could become. The compass bracelet sits in a small dish on our dresser now, not as a reminder of betrayal, but of the fact that sometimes you have to lose your way completely before you can find your direction home. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.